In a world of power, talent is manifested through crests. The higher the number of wings on a crest, the stronger it is. This boy possesses a 7-winged crest, rivaling the gods. However, because of that, greedy people went mad, hunting him down when he was just an infant. He had to crawl through the snowy mountains by himself to find a way to survive. Fortunately, he was saved and adopted by a family. For the first time, Aster had a real family, unlike his previous life back then. In the middle of the freezing battlefield filled with corpses, Roderick was astonished to see Aster appear. He demanded, "I entrusted you to command the army suppressing the East. Why are you here?" The only response was silence. Before, Aster coldly declared, "To kill you." He knew full well from the very beginning that Roderick intended to use his unit as bait, then discard them once they were no longer of value. Since he was so heartless, he shouldn't blame Aster for being merciless. Looking at his adoptive father in front of him, Aster painfully called out, "Father," but Roderick only replied with contempt, "That is the fate of those without wings. Is it not, my foolish son? That is Aster A. Elmham, a member of the Elmham family, the most renowned martial clan across the 6 continents, who swore to protect the royal family with their swords. The clan leader, Roderick, the only one in the kingdom possessing the power of 7 wings, had once impulsively saved Aster's life when he was close to death in a blizzard. To repay that life-saving favor, Aster risked his life doing everything he was asked, becoming a true warrior. But that devotion did not earn him respect within the clan. Dallas and his other siblings always mockingly demanded that Aster not delude himself about his position, because he is someone without wings. In this world, the wing crest is proof of magical power. The more wings, the stronger the magic. Is the only one in the clan who cannot use magic. Despite being despised, he still trained frantically with his sword, believing that one day, his loyalty would be worthily rewarded. He would make them open their eyes wide in realization, those who had previously looked down on him, and show them a lesson in manners. Amidst the blanketing white snow, Aster was horrified to realize he had fallen into a trap with no escape. Looking at the figures gradually surrounding him, he gasped, "Why, an ambush?" Directing his choked, bitter gaze toward the adoptive father he had once respected with all his heart, he screamed in agony, "Father, I trusted and followed you for so many years, and this is your answer?" Replying to that absolute devotion was only the contemptuous and cold look of Roderick, who nonchalantly uttered harsh words. "Does a tool have the right to expect anything? Your role is over. Begone." Unable to accept the brutal truth, Aster frantically rushed forward with the sword in his hand, screaming in belated regret, "I was so foolish to believe in you." However, Roderick only smirked ruthlessly. What a pitiful bastard. He then easily delivered a blow that sent him flying, and though Aster was already severely injured, the cruelty of those who called themselves family still did not stop there. Roderick flashed a murderous smile, while the others immediately unleashed glowing red magic chains, tightly binding Aster. And just like that, he was murdered by them, unable to resist. Standing before the man gasping for breath on the ground, a clan member continued to mock him. "Do you still not understand, brother-in-law? A wingless person will always remain wingless. Crawling on the ground like this suits you best." In his dying moments, Aster used the last of his fading strength to question the fake favor from years ago. "If you intended to discard me, then why did you save me in the first place?" Roderick knelt down, looking at his adoptive son with soulless eyes, and coldly declared, "Don't delude yourself. I never needed you." Roderick grabbed his hair. Aster coldly revealed the brutal truth. "What I needed was the power of the 7 wings hidden inside you." In utter agony, Aster gasped in shock. 7 wings. He continued to rub salt into his emotional wound. "Your mother was quite useful. She carried within her the seed that served my purpose." Having said that, he nonchalantly turned his back, leaving Aster gasping for breath in a pool of blood on the cold snow. Using the last of his fading strength, Aster tried to reach out toward that retreating figure. "Wait. What are you talking about?" he screamed in despair. "Answer me." Roderick, his consciousness gradually faded, and a bone-chilling cold invaded his body, leaving him only able to mutter feebly, "It's so cold. Dying like this is too agonizing. How can I bear this resentment?" As his vision grew blurry, Aster asked himself in bitterness, "Is this where I die? Then what did I live for?" Amidst the blanketing white expanse, a faint warmth enveloped him. Astonished, he questioned himself, "Is this the afterlife?" Suddenly noticing the snowflakes falling on his face, he softly uttered, "Snow? No, this is reality." Aster jolted awake, realizing he was still lying out in the snow, but in a completely different form. Looking at his tiny hands, he wondered in shock, "Where am I? Is this small body really mine?" Realizing he was in the body of a newborn infant, Aster thought to himself in disbelief, "No, this is a child's body." He was lying in the cold arms of a woman who had drawn her last breath. Amidst the white snow, could it be that I have regressed? In the distance, the sound of rapid hoofbeats and bright torchlights shattered the night. A squad of soldiers shouted orders, search everywhere. At all costs, we must find that woman. The commander leading them urged the troops. For the honor of Lord Roderick, find the child she kidnapped. Hearing that familiar name, Aster was stunned by the realization. They just mentioned Lord Roderick. Is he looking for a child, which is me? He suddenly remembered what he was once told about being abandoned in a blizzard years ago. The shocking truth left him in utter disbelief. It can't be. Have I really returned to the past? Even though it all made no sense, Aster knew he had to act immediately. Looking at the woman's corpse beside him, he made up his mind. If I stay here, I will fall into that duke's hands again. I must escape as far away as possible. The newborn baby began using his little strength to crawl with difficulty over the freezing snow, to flee from the pursuit. The bone-chilling cold and weak body left Aster exhausted. Damn it, I can't breathe. My limbs feel like they're burning. Despite having to crawl miserably in the dark night, the will for revenge still burned brightly in his amber gold eyes. Looking at the image of his enemy in his mind, he gritted his teeth and swore a bitter oath. Roderick, I swear I will survive. He is so tiny right now. Surviving on his own is hard enough, let alone seeking revenge. The long trail of crawling on the snow finally stopped when Aster's strength was completely depleted. The next morning, a little girl discovered him gasping for breath on the ice. Father, come here right now. A man of noble appearance approached. He was the Viscount of the Highfield family. Witnessing a newborn baby lying all alone in the blizzard, he couldn't help but gasp in shock. What is this? Viscount Highfield gently picked up the poor baby and wondered, in astonishment, why is there a baby in a place like this? Looking at the child fast asleep in his arms, he was stunned as he turned back to look at the long trail stretching across the snow. A series of skeptical questions rose in the Viscount's mind. A baby managed to travel such a long distance? Whose child is this? The child's extraordinary vitality left Highfield truly shaken and intrigued. He held the tiny life tightly to his chest, using his warm cloak to protect him from the bone-chilling cold of the vast white snow, while Aster began to fall into a deep sleep. Great, now he can rest assured and take another nap. Lost amidst an infinite space, Aster wondered in confusion, where am I? Seeing the image of a newborn baby, enveloped in light and feathers, he thought to himself, this child. Immediately, he was slapped in the face and woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, Aster saw a bunch of children surrounding him. A little girl cheered, Sister, this kid is awake. Being poked and prodded by those small hands. Another little girl reminded, don't play around anymore. You'll break that cute nose. Finding it extremely annoying, he irritatedly asked himself, what kind of situation is this? Unable to bear it any longer, Aster sprang up and ran away quickly, making the children cry out in panic. Aster ran frantically along the hallway, his mind filled with confusion. Damn it. What is going on? Behind him, the children still closely pursued, shouting, hey, stop right there. In his confusion and feeling cornered, Aster roared, why are you chasing me? He unconsciously released a golden aura. In the blink of an eye, completely unable to control his mana, he soared up into the air. Even he himself was stunned. But how do I get down now? This is a total disaster. Fortunately, the Viscount quickly caught him in his arms. Otherwise nothing would have been left of him. Looking at the child in his hands, he marveled. To think this time you fell from the sky. What a mysterious child. Aster was shocked when he recognized the face before him. This man, Viscount Highfield, of the Lordrick territory. He couldn't help but wonder skeptically. Could this be another branch of the Elmham family? Highfield Mu Elmham was indeed the head of the Viscount clan, a branch belonging to the prestigious Elmham family. He, along with his younger brother Roderick, were two warriors entrusted with the heavy responsibility of protecting the royal family. However, in Aster's memory, this Viscount was supposed to have died a long time ago in a civil war that led to the downfall of the entire Viscount clan. Witnessing the deceased, now standing tall right in front of him, Aster was completely certain. I have verified it. I really have returned to the past. How ironic that right after escaping from the cruel Duke's mansion, he was saved by none other than the man's older brother. A noble woman gently held Aster in her arms and asked in surprise, so this kid's magic went out of control and caused him to fly around like that? Highfield nodded in confirmation. That's right. And here I thought he was just an ordinary newborn baby. Looking at the trembling child, she gently reassured him. You were very scared, weren't you? It's all right now, then affectionately held him close. Why did he have to reincarnate when he was so tiny? I feel like something is a bit off here. While Aster was still dazed, Highfield thoughtfully observed and remarked, this child possesses a terrifying power. He stepped closer, decisively rolling up Aster's sleeve to confirm. Rolling up his sleeve to confirm. They fell silent upon seeing the crest on the baby's back. The woman gasped in shock. This is, while the Viscount could not hide his astonishment. 7 wings. Looking at the glowing red crest, Aster wondered in shock. Why is it on my body? The painful memories from his previous life suddenly rushed back like a nightmare. With Roderick's cruel declaration, what I need is precisely the power of the 7 wings that you hold. It turned out that from the very beginning, his salvation was merely a ruthless plot, picking him up like a piece of merchandise, to wait for the day to strip away all his power. The horrific truth made Aster boil with hatred. So he picked me up just to steal these 7 wings. What did you mean by saying I was wingless? How dare you say that after you were the one who tore those wings apart? Witnessing the strange, shifting expression of the child in her arms, Highfield's wife looked at her husband anxiously and asked, "So, what do you intend to do with this child?" "That's right, will he be just like his younger brother, and also find a way to harm him?" Aster thought to himself, this is bad. His tiny hands clenched tightly with determination. I cannot let this power fall into the hands of the Elmham family. I needed to take my revenge on him. However, completely contrary to his fears, Viscount Highfield made a decisive resolution. Let's adopt him. He gently placed his hand on Aster's head, soothing him tenderly. This child is still just a fledgling bird that cannot fly on its own. Until it grows enough feathers and wings to take flight, I will take responsibility for taking care of him. Amidst that solemn atmosphere, the room's door suddenly burst open, causing the children who were eavesdropping outside to tumble into the room. Highfield nonchalantly looked at his children piling on top of each other and asked, "Did everyone hear that clearly?" The wife of Viscount Highfield looked at the children surrounding her, softly sighing. "Yes, I am also truly worried about that child." Inside the warm room, an orange-haired little girl curiously tugged at her mother's hand and asked, "Mother, what is his name?" So their whole family is already prepared to accept a new member. They are very kind, aren't they? Looking at the child lying quietly in her arms, the woman smiled gently and declared, "Aster. That is the name of the newborn star. In our family, that name was like a blessing for the future of the child bearing these unique amber gold eyes." 15 years quickly passed by. The scene shifts to a magnificent and splendid castle. A line of 5 servants stood neatly in order, bowing respectfully as they saw the familiar figure appear. "We have been waiting for you, Viscount Highfield." Stepping out from the door was a young man with a poised demeanor, wearing a long sword at his hip. That is Aster after 15 years of training. He kindly extended his hand to support his sister and reminded her, "Sister Alphine, please be careful." Alphine smiled radiantly, taking her brother's hand with total trust. Thank you, Aster." Their whole family was arriving to attend the Sword Dance Festival, a grand event held annually by a duke's family under the Elmham clan. This was not merely a gathering for martial, noble families to bond over their beliefs, but also an occasion for each clan to display and gauge the strength of the candidate swordsmen representing their family names. Under Highfield's guidance, Aster and Alphine stepped into the main hall, where a multitude of eyes were focusing on the young talents who were about to showcase their skills. Rich people sure love to flaunt their power, always partying and boasting about how much money and wealth they have. The arrival of the Viscount clan's group immediately became the focal point of malicious whispers and gossip. The Viscount clan's group has arrived. Are they here to make fools of themselves again? Have they still not learned their lesson? Standing amidst the judging gazes, Aster quietly listened to the insults directed at him. Apparently, they adopted a boy of unknown origins instead of a proper heir who never shows up. I wonder how much more they intend to humiliate the reputation of the Elmham family. Seeing Aster remain silent before the surrounding dark shadows, Alphine anxiously reassured him, "Don't mind them." Even so, the pressure from the powerful still weighed heavily on the shoulders of the disadvantaged. Viscount Highfield spoke in a deep voice to instruct them. "In this place, whoever shows weakness will be crushed." This was the current standing of the Viscount clan. He led Aster to stand before the majestic castle, the very place that had been his obsession in his previous life, and frankly asked, "I wanted to show you this. Are you disappointed?" Contrary to his father's anxiety, Aster held his head high, his eyes shining with immense pride. "No, father. I am perfectly fine with this cold treatment." His courageous answer made Highfield burst out into hearty laughter. "Hearing you say that reassures me." Looking deep inside the castle, Aster thought to himself, "In my previous life, I appeared before society as a stain on the Elmham family. This place is filled with bitter memories. But now I am different. Returning here with the 7-winged crest. He has returned and is more formidable than before, haha." From the towering balcony, Dallas and the other arrogant ones narrowed their eyes, observing the infant from years ago who has now grown up. Aster felt those hostile glares, but he did not flinch at all. He walked proudly alongside his father and sister, a perfect plan burning brightly in his heart. His gaze was as sharp as a sword blade, silently declaring, "Now, first of all, Let's create a brilliant social debut together. In an era where knights held supreme dominance, their strength was determined by their swordsmanship skills. That was the absolute pinnacle of the way of the sword, where sharp sword strikes drew the line between the strong and the weak, and majesty was an immortal reputation, an ultimate symbol that any swordsman yearned to attain. On the arena, glowing blue magic power erupted from the youth's hands, creating powerful slashes that left opponents no time to react, completely collapsing before the overwhelming power. The crystallization of both that strength and majesty was none other than the crest. Looking at the two-winged symbol, glowing brightly on the victor's hand, Aster quietly observed from the towering balcony, standing beside his father and his sister Alphine. He felt clearly that the overwhelming nature of this place remained unchanged as usual. Witnessing the intense and volatile atmosphere down in the arena, he thought to himself, no wonder siblings Foreign and Fry didn't want to come. Faint-hearted people like me are also very scared of watching head-on fights. He recalled the memory of when he used to be insulted by the noble elites. Insulted in this very place, he still felt bitter about it. Seeing Aster remain silent with a contemplative face, Alphine anxiously called out, Aster? She softly asked out of concern for her brother's state of mind. Are you trembling? Well, that's understandable, since this is your first sword dance festival. However, Aster only slightly curled his lips. His eyes filled with utter contempt as he looked at the chaotic scene below. Not really. I feel a bit nauseous. Or rather, truly disgusted. Viscount Highfield announced that he had a meeting and had to step away for a moment, not forgetting to instruct Aster to keep a close eye on Alphine. His older sister immediately objected. Honestly, father, I am a year older than Aster, but she only received a teasing look from her brother. That's because you are too clumsy, sister. Before leaving, Highfield patted Aster's shoulder, advising him to make use of this opportunity to socialize and expand his relationships with peers of his age. He leaned close to his son's ear, giving a meaningful reminder. Just don't expose the 7 wings, and you'll be fine. Aster looked at his father's retreating figure, thinking to himself that this was easier said than done. Sensing countless malicious, glaring eyes surrounding him from behind, he scratched his head in boredom. But how am I supposed to socialize when the atmosphere is this hostile? They wouldn't even give him a chance to socialize anyway. Dealing with this narrow-minded bunch, going back to sleep would be much more pleasant. Suddenly, a cold gleam flashed in his eyes. Seeing Aster decisively walking away, Alphine called after him in a panic. Aster, where are you going? He only looked back and replied mysteriously, I'm going to make some friends, and headed straight toward the lounge area, where the arrogant laughter of the nobles echoed continuously. Seeing a stranger blocking his view, Dallas irritably set his wine glass down and growled. Who the hell are you? Aster maintained a calm smile, bowing in greeting. It is a pleasure to meet you, Brother Dallas. I am Aster H. Elmham, your cousin. He nonchalantly explained that he saw his brother from afar, so he wanted to come over and say hello. Immediately, Rian sitting nearby spoke up mockingly. He's the adopted kid the Viscount clan picked up. Hearing that, Dallas burst into a frantic laugh. He placed his hand on his forehead and insulted. No wonder. You sure are shameless to dare carry the letter H in your name. Looking at the faces of Dallas and Rian, the 2 official heirs of the Elmham family, Aster coldly confirmed. These were the very people who had directly attacked him in his previous life. Even if you turned to ash, I would still recognize you. Looking at the people in front of him, Aster thought to himself how pathetic it was that back then, he used to tremble in fear before those who now, in his eyes, were just like children playing a game. Just go back, greeting you is enough. Dallas managed to call Aster back. Oh, Alphine, you're here too? Seeing Alphine trembling with fear, he continued to utter sarcastic remarks. Don't tell me you're still hiding behind your dad's back. Why don't you come over here and serve us? This is an order from the main family. Alphine decisively stood up to protect her honor. I refuse. There is no master-servant relationship between the main family and the branch family. She decisively pulled his hand to drag him away. However, that guy still yelled out, I haven't finished speaking yet. He flashed a twisted smile. Did you know? This girl's father was a knight. So cowardly that he couldn't even protect the king. So he had to plead guilty and had his arm cut off by his own brother. Dallas triumphantly added a fatal line. Fortunately, I don't carry defeated blood like you. Unable to endure it any longer, Alphine screamed in resentment. Take back your words right now. Do not insult my father. Immediately, Dallas splashed a glass of red wine straight at her, coldly insulting her. Giving birth to nothing but useless women who cannot inherit the title. Your father must be very disappointed. You bastard, if there were no women, did you crawl out from a rock? How dare you look down on someone like that? If it were me, I'd fight to the end. Looking at Alphine trembling in her soaked, elegant dress, Dallas smirked maliciously. This isn't a ballroom, you know. Next time, you should wear ragged clothes so you won't regret getting soaked. looking at his sister's tears falling. Aster's eyes grew cold. Witnessing that scene, Aster quietly stepped closer, his eyes shrouded in darkness. In his mind right now, there was only one thought. At first, I was worried. Worried that I would lose the feeling of fury when seeing your faces. But fortunately, their wretchedness had helped him find the fire of revenge again. He casually borrowed a wine bottle from the guy next to him. Aster gently placed his hand on Alphine's shoulder to reassure her, then coldly called out, "Hey, Dallas." He threw the liquor bottle high up, leaving everyone startled. The sword was drawn from its scabbard as fast as lightning. The slash caused the wine to splash all over them, being abruptly drenched in wine. Dallas screamed in shock. The surrounding lackeys panic-strickenly called out, "Brother." Amidst that chaos, Aster still maintained a terrifyingly calm attitude. He nonchalantly wiped the wine from his lips, his eyes shining with a threatening glare. "Oh, it's just grape juice. It suits insolent nobles like you guys very well, doesn't it?" The horrifying memory from 3 years ago suddenly rushed back, when Aster's power first erupted out of control. Amidst the glowing golden energy burning everything, a desperate scream echoed, "Stop it, Aster!" Witnessing that horrific scene, the little girl Foreign held her fainting sister and sobbed. "Are you trying to kill her? Snap out of it." Looking at that brilliant, yet deadly aura, Viscount Highfield could not help but be stunned. This is the Seven Wings. I never thought it harbored such a dangerous power. Clutching his sword hilt, he anxiously questioned himself whether a child could control this divine power or not. Because if he couldn't subdue it, it would devour both Aster and everyone around him. This latent power was like a wild beast that couldn't distinguish between foe and friend. Attacking anyone on sight like this is too dangerous, isn't it? Back to the present. Right after Aster's provocative act of slashing the wine, a soldier frantically rushed into the Grand Noble's meeting room and shouted loudly, "My lord, something terrible has happened." Highfield, who was busy discussing grand matters with Roderick, frowned in annoyance. "What is it?" "We are having an important meeting here," the soldier reported tremblingly. "It's the members of the main family and the Elmham branch family. Their 2 sons are locked in a sword duel." "What?" Both Highfield and Roderick were stunned by the shocking news. Without a second's hesitation, the Viscount immediately and decisively rushed out to the main hall. As soon as she saw her father, Alphine frantically ran over and called out, "Father." He hastily asked, "Alphine, what the hell is going on?" She could only tremble, pointing toward the chaotic crowd where Aster and Dallas were in a fierce confrontation in the main hall. The crowd began whispering and gossiping about this rare spectacle of fratricide within the prominent and powerful Elmham clan. A strange guy, wearing a hat, with glowing red eyes, watched and remarked sarcastically, "This sword dance festival seems really fun." Dallas frantically channeled his magic power, making his sword glow with the deadly red hue of death. He laughed arrogantly, mocking Aster. "You are just a stray dog wandering around, understanding nothing about the difference in power." Immediately, a 4-winged crest shone brightly on Dallas's hand, making the spectators marvel. At the superior level of a duke's disciple, he pointed his sword tip toward Aster, challenging him, "Come on, let me see your wing crest. Or are you too embarrassed to show it after seeing mine?" But despite that provocation, Aster still maintained a terrifyingly calm expression. He contemptuously replied, "Flaunting some nonsensical patterns with pride is a humiliating thing that I would never do." Those words wounded his pride, making Dallas's face turn purple with rage, his eyes rolling in fury. Aster coldly set a condition. "More importantly, if I win, you must apologize to my sister." Dallas smirked and agreed, but also demanded an extremely high price. "If I win, you will be my hunting dog. I will make you work until you die." Without waiting another second, Dallas roared with murderous intent and rushed straight into attack. He swung his sword, creating slashes, determined to finish off his opponent immediately. However, Aster moved gracefully like a ghost, easily neutralizing the powerful strikes. The sound of clashing metal echoed loudly throughout the hall as Aster calmly used his blade to block his enemy's fierce attack. For him, beating these puny kids is as simple as piece of cake. Behold the power of the 4-winged crest. Dallas roared, swinging his sword glowing with magical fire toward his opponent. The frantic slashes created a terrifying pressure, leaving Alphine standing above, only able to watch anxiously and scream, "Aster." Even though Dallas's swordsmanship was judged to be still amateur and green, the overwhelming magical energy from the 4-winged crest made up for all those shortcomings. That is the absolute advantage of those who bear a winged crest, using pure magical power to crush all techniques. If a 1-winged magic power only flickered like a candle in the wind, then a 4-winged magic power was as powerful as a horrific explosion. Dallas mockingly laughed while frantically attacking. "Where's that boastful attitude from earlier, huh? Didn't you want me to apologize? Or was that just empty talk?" He pressed closer, yelling to demand Aster unleash his true power. Witnessing the one-sided battle, the spectators were all smugly convinced that this match was already decided. Aster coldly shot back, "You talk too much." Immediately he spun around to parry the attack and closed in extremely fast, leaving Dallas only able to utter in astonishment, "What? There, do you know what manners are now? Next time, talk less and do more." A brilliant golden magic power suddenly burst forth, enveloping Aster's entire body with overwhelming majesty. He spoke in a deep voice, declaring his 15 years of grueling training within the Viscount clan. All of it was just waiting for the day he could take revenge on those who had once trampled on him. Aster swung his sword, unleashing glowing golden slashes, ready to crush the enemy before him. Aster's glowing golden magic power exploded, forcing Dallas into a tight corner, leaving him only able to groan. Guh. Witnessing this unthinkable scene, Rian stood on the side and gasped in shock, "B brother." Dallas gritted his teeth in resentment. He could not accept this brutal reality and frantically questioned himself. Am I being pushed back? I possess 4 wings. Contrary to that panic, Aster still maintained a cold expression along with his overwhelmingly glowing eyes, causing the crowd of nobles below to begin stirring in terror. Hey, it can't be. He's actually going to win. They realized in astonishment that Dallas was being completely overwhelmed and couldn't help but tremble in fear. Does Elmham still have monsters like this? While Aster was fiercely attacking, Viscount Highfield, standing on the balcony, began to notice the abnormal signs. He spoke in a deep, worried voice, "This is bad." Dallas tried to resist in despair, his face distorted from the terrifying magical pressure, the painful memories of the betrayal, and the mocking laughter of his enemies in his previous life suddenly rushed back, burning Aster's mind with a blazing fire of revenge. The utter fury caused his magic power to erupt, powerfully like a storm, ready to crush the person trembling before him. Faced with the suffocating murderous intent, Dallas could only feebly beg, "Stop." Witnessing the scene about to go out of control, Highfield shouted out in a panic, "No, Aster." Boom. A resounding sound. The match ended in astonishment. It turned out he only stabbed into the ground. Otherwise, that brat would have met his ancestors. But that was enough to make him piss his pants. He coldly declared. Aster coldly threw back the exact insult from earlier. "Next time, remember to wear ragged clothes so you won't regret getting soaked." Cousin. A true man. 15 years is not too late for revenge, haha. Aster held his head high, looking up at the balcony, where Alphine was anxiously watching. In his heart, he told himself, "I am no longer Aster, the nameless, wingless nobody." The new feeling of freedom and power made Aster's mind clearer than ever before. However, a thick aura of murderous intent suddenly invaded, causing his pupils to contract. Aster turned around with a jolt, his breathing turning heavy as he sensed an extremely terrifying presence. It was from above the stairs, radiating a pressure that seemed to freeze the air. That was none other than Roderick. Aster gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with a look of pure hatred, as he came face to face with the monster that had ruined his life. After all these years, the demon has appeared before him. Now what should he do next? The entire stands held their breath in utter astonishment. Whispers began to echo throughout the arena. Unbelievable. The youngest son of the Viscount branch family actually defeated the third son of the main family. However, the astonishment was quickly replaced by an overarching fear. A spectator anxiously warned, "But now we are in big trouble. He won't stay silent after his honor has been trampled like this." Aster quietly walked away, his sharp eyes glancing at Dallas, who was lying and laughing frantically on the ground, before directing his gaze toward the tall figure standing majestically at the top of the stairs. That was Roderick, the 8th clan leader of the Elmham family, who was radiating a suffocating pressure. Aster did not avoid it at all. Seeing his father appear, Dallas acted as if he had found a lifeline, crawling miserably on the ground. It's him. This scum dared to oppose our main family. EW, that's playing dirty. If you can't win a fight, you go snitch to an adult? Be a good sport. He continued, using a vile tone to incite his father's fury. "Father, please use your power to teach him a lesson." However, before he could finish his words, Roderick decisively swung his sheathed sword, delivering a thunderous blow down upon his begging son's hand, making the scene turn horrific. Dallas's screams of agony echoed throughout the hall, leaving the crowd frozen in terror. Roderick looked at his defeated son with utter contempt. "Why is a loser like you standing there grinning like that, huh? Do you realize you just humiliated the entire family?" he coldly declared. For those who cannot protect themselves, witnessing Roderick's furious rage, Viscount Highfield shouted in panic, "Roderick, stop. Don't do this." Despite the plea to stop, Roderick roared that you are unworthy of holding a sword, then swung his great sword, intending to finish off his own biological son. At the exact moment the Grim Reaper's blade was about to fall, Aster rushed in like a flash of lightning. Aster stood blocking the tip of Roderick's sword, his eyes not wavering in the slightest. Looking toward the defeated man, he said, "That cousin still hasn't apologized to Sister Al." "Fine," he boldly requested the clan leader. "Uncle, could you wait for him to finish doing that before punishing me later, please? Even if he's going to die, he still has to fulfill what he promised first, haha." Faced with the child's proud attitude, Roderick coldly uttered words of contempt. "An orphan adopted by Highfield, so the rumors say. Do you actually think you are a member of the Elmham family?" Without flinching at all, Aster asserted his position. "I am the Viscount's son. Though we do not share the same blood, a knight's pride and family responsibility are things I have learned from my father." The space suddenly froze before Roderick's terrifying silence. He radiated a glowing red murderous aura, growling to remind him of the hierarchy. "As a member of a branch family, you have defiled the honor of the main family without cause." He proudly asserted his status as the king's sword, the pinnacle of the 12,000 knights under his command, aiming to put pressure on the young teenager. Witnessing the situation escalate, the spectating nobles all realized the severity of the situation. This is no longer a mere childish squabble. Roderick continued to use the painful past to threaten him. "Your father had to pay the price of an arm for his disloyalty." He pressed his sword down heavily and questioned, "And what do you intend to sacrifice?" Unable to out-argue a child, the old man brought out his status and power to bully him. How malicious! Amidst the crushing pressure, Aster still maintained an extraordinary calmness. He replied fiercely, "With all due respect, uncle, this was not a random quarrel, but an official duel. I only used my sword to answer the insults directed at the Viscount family." Aster's eyes shone brightly. He looked straight at his enemy and used the man's own philosophy to counterattack. "Those who do not avenge themselves are unworthy of holding a sword." "Aren't those your exact words, uncle?" He decisively declared his iron will. "I don't intend to sacrifice anything, not even a single finger." While Alphine was still trembling with anxiety, the spectators couldn't help but be shocked upon learning the truth about Aster's age. "He's 10 years old. Is this a joke?" Roderick only quietly looked at the child before him with bloodshot, mysterious eyes. Roderick coldly uttered, "I see," then decisively ordered, "In that case, take your stance." Immediately, a terrifying pressure descended, leaving Aster astonished and unable to react in time. Roderick unleashed a slash at the speed of light, creating an earth-shattering magical explosion that crushed the solid stone floor into 100 pieces. Is he seriously playing for keeps against a child? Witnessing the horrific sight, Alphine could only cover her face and cry in despair. Viscount Highfield roared in absolute fury. Roderick, and risked his life to rush into the center of the battlefield. He swung his sword to block the clan leader's brutal attack at the very last second, creating a fiery clash between the two brothers. Under the suffocating pressure from the shockwave of the impact, Highfield shouted his son's name in extreme anxiety. "Aster, are you all right?" Amidst the dense dust cloud and ruined stone pillars, the young man's figure gradually emerged. Despite being severely injured and having blood streaming down his face, Aster still stood firm with his sword in hand, his eyes glowing with an unyielding will. The bloodstained face of Aster clearly showed absolute hatred as he looked straight at his enemy. Roderick quietly observed the child for a long moment with an emotionless expression, then nonchalantly turned his back and walked away, leaving Dallas lying miserably on the devastated ground. Witnessing the clan leader's retreating figure gradually fade away, Aster also gradually lost his strength and collapsed, to his father's deep anxiety, being struck by a surprise attack without time to prepare. It's a miracle that a 10-year-old child like him didn't die. Highfield anxiously supported his son's staggering body and called out loudly, "Aster." Despite his blood-stained face, he still smiled contentedly and muttered feebly, "I protected sister, father, the promise and everything." Looking at the resilient child, Highfield choked back tears and replied, "Yes, you did well." On the other side, Roderick quietly walked down the stairs, abandoning Dallas, who was collapsed miserably beneath the observing eyes from above. Witnessing the incident, a bearded nobleman spoke up sarcastically. "You used a rather childish trick there, Roderick." He remarked that if Aster were allowed to act as he pleased, the main family's honor would be completely shattered. So Roderick's intervention could be considered a fair compromise. Looking toward the young man who had just caused an earthquake, he thought to himself that this was the most impressive debut in high society, daring to directly confront even the Grand Duke. The nobleman accompanying him trembled and broke into a cold sweat, while the other man admitted that his own heart almost stopped out of fear that the illustrious Elmham family would be split in two after this battle. Indeed, a childish squabble almost offended the elders and ruined the whole clan. Roderick pondered with his glowing red eyes. He could sense a chaotic era approaching, a storm large enough to tear the world into pieces. Down below, Alphine frantically rushed over to check on Aster's wounds, while Highfield was still supporting him. Despite his injured body, Aster still flashed a radiant smile amidst the anxious arms of his father and sister. The clashing sound of wooden swords echoed throughout the training grounds as Aster easily knocked down his opponent with a single decisive blow. Lying flat on the ground, the soldier could only exclaim in admiration. Truly impressive. Young Master Aster. The extraordinary progress of the 10-year-old youth became a subject of lively discussion among the surrounding soldiers. His skills are no joke at all. He's only 10 years old. Truly terrifying. They realized that since returning from the Sword Dance Festival, Aster seemed to have transformed into a different person, throwing himself into training with a terrifying amount of motivation. The rumor about him crushing Lord Roderick's third son spread quickly, making the members of the Viscount branch family feel extremely refreshed. After so many years of being forced by the main family to swallow bitter pills, now having someone slap their faces like that was deeply satisfying. It felt absolutely wonderful. Aster thought to himself, at the Sword Dance Festival, I displayed enough strength and majesty to at least shut the mouths of those who criticized the Viscount branch family as the disgrace of Elmham. However, his ambition did not just stop there. The true target of Aster was still the Elmham main family itself, which was full of injustice. He frantically swung his sword, trying to push his own limits even further to test his true power. His eyes flashed brightly with determination as he recalled the moment of confrontation with Roderick. He admitted, I wanted to test things out further right then and there. Looking back at the wounds from the previous encounter, Aster bitterly realized that with his current level, he could not defeat Roderick yet. He understood clearly that the wing crest was merely a measure of one's magical potential tier, while true strength lay in the ability to unleash it. Even though he carried the legendary 7 wings within him, if he could not control that flow of magical power, it would just be wasting his innate potential. Aster poured all his strength into a powerful sword swing, silently, wishing that he could test the 7 wings to their limits, without worrying that they would violently erupt out of control. Slowly but surely, you are only 10 years old right now after all. Swinging the wooden sword, he roared proudly, who's next? Who else is there? Witnessing that chaotic scene, Alphine gently let out a weary sigh. It's starting again, huh? Our Aster never knows how to restrain himself. It was truly unbelievable. She stepped closer and announced, Oh, father is calling for you. Hearing that, Aster immediately sheathed his sword, softly replying, Father? Understood, I'm going. Looking at his sister's appearance, Aster couldn't help but be surprised by the neat training attire she was wearing. He remarked, This outfit is quite a rare sight. Didn't you used to criticize it as ugly and hate wearing it? Alphine thoughtfully explained. Everything needs a balance, right? Watching you made me think that. I cannot go on like this forever. Suddenly, she pointed the wooden sword straight at her brother's face, flashing a challenging smile. So when you return, you must dedicate a lot of time to me. Faced with his sister's demanding request, Aster could only laugh and wave his hands. Haha, please spare me. He left the training grounds where the bodies of the soldiers lay scattered everywhere to head toward his father's office. Standing before the intricately carved wooden door, Aster politely knocked, Excuse me. Stepping inside, he saw Viscount Highfield standing thoughtfully by the window. Aster politely asked, What do you need, father? The Viscount turned around, his face showing a stern expression. Sit down. Seeing a parent like this is actually quite nerve-wracking. Aster quietly sat down opposite his father. Highfield looked at his adopted son with a deep, contemplative gaze and began the conversation. It has been nearly 10 years since the day we brought you into our family. I intended to wait until you were a bit more mature. But, saying this, he placed a small cushion on the table, upon which sat a ring set with a glowing, sparkling red gemstone. Child, Aster gasped in shock. This is. Highfield looked straight into his eyes and boldly declared, The proof of the successor. You, Aster. Father wants you to inherit the Viscount branch family. Viscount. Highfield decisively made the proposal, leaving Aster utterly stunned. He explained that Aster himself understood very well that the Viscount branch family was in an extremely precarious position, and whether they want to or not, they are still a branch carrying the Elmham name with the heavy responsibility of protecting their own territory, so they cannot leave the succession vacant forever. Faced with this monumental decision, Aster anxiously asked, Have my sisters agreed to this? Highfield informed him that when he goes to the Knight Academy, he will meet and officially announce this matter to his sisters, mentioning Sister Matha and especially Sister Kudo. Aster thought to himself that they wouldn't be happy at all. In fact, Kudo would definitely fly into a furious rage. Highfield sighed and admitted, She hates you simply because you are a boy who was fortunate enough to obtain the 7 wings. But did she care about the times he went through hell before achieving success? Aster decisively stood up and declined. I cannot accept this, father. He admitted that he was still too inexperienced, as he couldn't even control his own magical power, leading to the incident, where he almost harmed his own sister. Witnessing the extraordinarily mature mind of the 10-year-old child, Highfield pondered, you always make me wonder if you're actually a child or not. He put the succession ring back into its box and opened another secret compartment. I thought this ring would be a reward for your performance at the Sword Dance Festival, but it seems you prefer this instead. Aster gasped in shock upon seeing the true gift inside. It was none other than the magic sword Graham, the legendary sword capable of devouring magical power, the only thing that could help him completely suppress the violent strength of the Seven Wings. Highfield led Aster to a secluded forest and nodded in satisfaction. Very well, this spot is perfect. When Aster wondered why they didn't use the training hall, his father reminded him of the times he went overboard and smashed everything around him to explain this caution. He solemnly presented a sword that was still inside its scabbard. This magic sword Graham is an heirloom treasure, passed down only to the eldest son of the Elmham clan leader. I had someone bring it from the main family's warehouse just for you. The main mansion just for you. So did he have the right to take it, or did he just casually swipe it? Haha. Aster was stunned to see that the treasured sword Graham actually had no blade, but was a broken sword instead. Highfield explained that this is a sword of potential. It only truly completes itself when its master pours magic power into it. Right after saying this, he demonstrated by channeling his magic power, causing a glowing red, bizarrely shaped blade to burst forth, radiating a terrifying pressure that left Aster in awe. The destructive power of Graham created a horrific slash, tearing the ground apart and crushing an entire area of the dense forest ahead in the blink of an eye. Highfield gave a serious warning. However, if your magic power is too mediocre, you could have your entire strength completely drained by the sword itself. He handed the hilt toward his son and asked, So, do you want to try it, Aster? Trembling as he took it, his mind was filled with skepticism about channeling magic power into this ancient and highly dangerous weapon. The moment his hand touched the sword hilt, a brilliant golden aura suddenly exploded powerfully, enveloping Aster's entire body. He realized in shock that the magic power inside him was automatically being frantically sucked into the sword, without him even controlling it. The colossal energy stream from Graham shot straight up into the blue sky like a dazzling pillar of light, drawing the attention and astonishment of those who were watching from afar. Fortunately, his father had anticipated this and brought him out here. Otherwise the whole village might have been wiped out. A soldier asked in panic whether a shooting star had just fallen, but he was immediately dismissed by his comrade because that light was clearly soaring from the ground straight up into the blue sky. Watching from afar, Alphine couldn't help but worry, what on earth is that? It must be Aster. At the center of the magical explosion, Aster looked at the weapon in his hand in amazement and silently marveled. This is truly an extraordinary sword. However, the Viscount Highfield looked at his son with a stern gaze and asserted, but what is truly extraordinary is your own power. He explained that throughout the long history of the Elmham family, there had never been anyone who possessed the legendary seven-winged crest. Looking at the stream of energy violently swirling in the sky, Highfield confidently declared, once you master this power, you will surpass even me, a bearer of the six-winged crest, and even Lord Roderick. Hearing the name of his enemy from his past life, Aster clenched his hand, harboring a fierce determination to surpass that monster. Highfield continued to give a vital warning about the flip side of power. But too much power always sows the seeds of conflict. He feared that if the secret of the seven wings was leaked, Aster would become the focal point of jealousy and envy. There will be people frantically trying to use you as a tool, and there will be no shortage of those who want to destroy you as a nuisance that needs to be eliminated. Being weaker gets you looked down on, being stronger gets you hated. That really hits the mark, doesn't it, guys? He looked at his adopted son with deep concern, therefore, so that you won't have to regret your own powerlessness when that moment comes. Become strong while you still can, Aster. Looking at his father's outstretched hand, Aster decisively grasped it, firmly resolving in his heart that he would never let himself live such a miserable life as in his previous existence again. He looked straight into Highfield's eyes and affirmed, Thank you, father. I will definitely master both the seven wings and this sword. 3 days later, the two older sisters returned to the mansion, where the Viscountess and Alphine were already waiting with radiant smiles. Welcome home, girls. As soon as they stepped into the mansion, a girl with fiery orange hair and expressive green eyes loudly announced, The useless Kudo has returned. Walking beside her was a silver-haired young woman with a much more calm and gentle appearance. After a short cough, the orange-haired girl, who was Kudo, immediately flashed a radiant smile. and opened her arms wide with excitement. Come on, my beloved younger sisters. Give your big sister a hug for our reunion. However, contrary to Kudo's enthusiasm, the two youngest sisters brushed past her like a gust of wind to rush into the silver-haired sister's arms and cheer. Welcome home, Sister Mafa. Being brutally abandoned. Kudo could only freeze in shock. Oh my goodness. Huh, what about a hug for Sister Kudo? Watching this ironic scene from afar, the Viscount couple Field and Alphine could only look on with sympathetic eyes. There is a rather significant case of discrimination and unequal treatment happening here, haha. Explaining this cold shoulder. One of the little sisters, while holding Mafa tightly, murmured, softly, but Sister Kudo. She always messes up my hair. Hearing that, Kudo crossed her arms with wounded pride, trying to maintain her image. No way. How could someone who has completely imbued themselves with the knightly spirit like me behave in such an improper manner? However, the moment she saw Alphine, Kudo's true nature surged back forcefully. She rushed over, tightly hugging Alphine and pinching her cheeks with sheer excitement. Have you been a good girl at home? Alphine, squeezed to the point of suffocation, could only feebly ask in helplessness. Huh, why did you run over here? Just as the little sisters said, Kudo's hands started doing their work again, mercilessly ruffling Alphine's pink hair. Noticing the absence of the new member, Mafa looked around and wondered, where's Aster? Standing beside his wife. Ah, if you want to find Aster. Hearing that name, Kudo's gaze suddenly hardened. For what reason does this big sister not have much sympathy for this adopted younger brother? Meanwhile, at a clearing deep in the forest, a glowing red magical explosion had just swept through, leveling an entire area of trees. Aster was frantically throwing himself into training, dripping with sweat and breathing heavily. Pant, pant. He gritted his teeth in immense stress as he sensed the instability within his body. Damn it, this is not good. Looking at the magic swordgram, blazing with energy in his hand, Aster silently questioned himself. I can create a blade using magic power, but right now just controlling it is already my limit. Even though he had created a destructive force that cracked the ground open, he still felt that he himself was far too small compared to his goal ahead. What must I do to become like father? Suddenly, a highly sarcastic voice echoed from behind. Oh my, this time really exceeds expectations, doesn't it? Aster turned around with a jolt, recognizing his big sister, who had just returned, standing with her arms crossed and observing him. Sister Kudo, you're back already? Kudo leisurely stepped closer, the smile on her lips carrying a hint of challenge. I thought you didn't even bother to show up to welcome your big sister. Isn't that a bit too cold? She stepped right up, her gaze piercing into Aster scrutinizingly. Or is it because you think you're special, so you don't care about us at all? Kudo continued to pile on words full of double meanings. I've heard about what happened at the Sword Dance Festival. The Knight Academy is buzzing with all kinds of rumors about you. Father must have been very proud of you. This big sister is just good at loaded questions. Why make things hard for our youngest like that? Aster, without hesitation, praised Kudo's admirable achievements. Even though you're just a trainee, you've participated in countless dangerous missions, and are the only knight to be awarded the Medal of Honor this year. Kudo admitted she put in that much effort, simply to prove that she herself was worthy of inheriting her father's legacy. Her gaze became razor-sharp as she asked directly, I heard you rejected the offer to become the successor? Did you do that for my sake? The sudden question made Aster feel annoyed because his father had revealed the secret too early. He tried to explain that he simply felt he wasn't worthy enough yet, but Kudo didn't seem to accept that reason. She walked past coldly, asserting that they both knew very well what each other's true dream was, and that his refusal only made her more annoyed. Suddenly, Kudo swung her sword, creating a glowing blue slash with terrifying power, easily splitting a giant ancient tree right before Aster's eyes. He dodged in shock, his eyes wide with utter astonishment at his sister's sudden attack. Aster shouted out in a panic, what are you doing? Exactly, they were just talking, and she suddenly scared the life out of him. Haha. Ignoring her brother's bewilderment, Kudo stood proudly amidst the cloud of dust, declaring that this would be a little test. After their long time apart, she flashed an excited smile and warned, next, I'll be attacking for real. Aster began to fall into a state of panic. He tried to stop her. Wait a minute, Sister Alphine. In his heart, he was extremely worried because the magic swordgram was still incomplete and very difficult to control. Kudo coldly reminded him that enemies on the battlefield would never accept any excuses. She asserted the ultimate rule of a knight, which is to always be ready to fight in any situation. Without giving Aster time to compose himself, Kudo rushed in like a whirlwind, threatening in a low voice. If you stay like this, I might just crush you. Aster realized he was being backed into a corner, as all his efforts to restrain his magic power for so long were gradually becoming meaningless against this suffocating pressure. Seeing the genuine murderous intent in Kudo's eyes, Aster understood that if he didn't strike back, he would definitely be killed by her. Left with no other choice, he decided to release all his suppressed power. A stream of blood-red magic power suddenly burst out, bursting from the sword, enveloping Aster's body with a brutal power. The two energy streams, blue and red, clashed violently, creating an earth-shattering explosion right in the middle of the forest. The horrific magical explosion blew everything away, plowing through a vast area of the dense forest. Kudo rushed in like a glowing red specter, laughing with sheer excitement. Your swordsmanship is as sharp as ever, isn't it? I didn't expect you to keep up with my strikes, especially after I elevated that skill at the Night Academy. These two siblings are officially duking it out to see who's stronger. If their parents find out, they better watch out. Aster gritted his teeth, bracing himself to resist, but Kudo kept up her continuous attacks and spoke sarcastically. However, what on earth was that bizarre swordsmanship just now, huh? Your ability to control magic power is a complete mess. It makes no sense at all. Pushed back by the suffocating pressure, Aster's feet dragged across the ground, leaving long tracks. He panted heavily in immense stress. Sister Kudria Afka is still not holding back at all. Looking at the figure of his sister standing majestically amidst the dust cloud, Aster bitterly recalled the old years. In his memories, she had always been like that. Simply because Aster was the only son with inheritance rights, Kudo, the genius who possessed the most superior wing crest in the family, had always viewed him as a thorn in her side. To him, this big sister was no different from a violent storm, always finding any unfair reason to force him into constant duels. She truly was his natural nemesis that he never wanted to face. The ground shook as the blue and red magic power streams once again clashed head-on, creating a soaring pillar of light that tore through the sky. Kudo pierced her brother with a gaze, her eyes glowing with murderous intent. She growled and declared, "That's right, Aster. You are completely unworthy of becoming the next clan leader of this family. This big sister is fighting and insulting him at the same time. Being the younger brother is truly miserable." Standing by the window, observing the horrific battle out there, Mafa couldn't help but ask anxiously, "Father, is it really alright to just let the two of them handle it like that? In the worst-case scenario, this sibling brawl could end with a cold corpse. You know that, right, Father?" Contrary to his daughter's anxiety, Viscount Highfield calmly looked toward the confrontation and remarked, "In a way, they are actually the perfect opponents for each other. Even though it's a bit reckless, it won't lead to a bloody tragedy." Despite hearing her father's reassurance, Mafa could only break into a cold sweat and hope that everything would happen exactly as he said. Returning to the desk, Mafa went straight to the main point. "In the end, why did you call us back from the Night Academy, Father? It's certainly not just to discuss the succession, is it?" Highfield quietly placed a letter with a red wax seal on the table. It was an emergency summons from the Elmham main family. He spoke in a deep voice, revealing the haunting truth. It seems the elders currently in power at the main family want to see with their own eyes how their nephew is doing. He has already entered the family's crosshairs. Now, how to live in peace is the real issue. Looking at the letter, Mafa was shocked, realizing the gravity of the situation was far greater than she thought. Highfield's face turned grim, and he uttered a spine-chilling warning. "In the worst-case scenario, we might lose Aster." Meanwhile, in the forest, the clashes of swords still created streams of glowing blue magic power, tearing through the air. Aster, bracing himself to resist, shouted out in anger, "Stop talking nonsense. I already rejected the succession matter. You heard it loud and clear yourself." However, that explanation only fueled Kudo's rage further. She gritted her teeth, her eyes flashing frantically as she swung her sword. "And that's exactly what drives me crazy." Sensing 1,000 pounds of weight pressing down on his blade, Aster could only grit his teeth and exclaim in helplessness. "So heavy, oh my god. This scene of a younger brother being bullied by his older sister is so familiar. It's also happening somewhere around us. Haha." Aster felt as though he were confronting a giant bull holding a sledgehammer. The pressure from Kudo left him suffocated. Even though he tried to plead with his sister to listen, Kudo only coldly replied, "You're just running away, aren't you?" Her sword strikes were so fast and powerful that Aster could only brace himself to resist in pain. "Ugh, what kind of monstrous strength is this?" Kudo lectured him while overwhelming him, claiming that someone who only knows how to swing a sword mindlessly like him is merely third-rate. She asserted, "Only when you control your magic power do you become second-rate, and you must master the way of the magic sword to be worthy of being first-rate." Looking at her younger brother struggling at her feet, Kudo showed clear disappointment. "You truly disappoint me, Aster." She began to analyze the difference in wing crests, where a difference of a single wing means a threefold increase in power regarding both magical firepower and physical strength. Theoretically, Kudo's 5 wings should be completely eclipsed by Aster's 7 wings, yet. The reality was that he constantly avoided a head-on clash using a cowardly and clumsy swordsmanship, teaching the younger brother while scolding and insulting him. That can only be a beloved older sister, boo-hoo. Kudo pierced deep into Aster's mind when she asked if it was because he didn't dare to believe in his own power, or if he was afraid of losing control like in that accident 3 years ago. That question was like a splash of cold water, making Aster ask himself in shock. Afraid? Am I afraid of the power of the 7 wings? Aster stared intently at the magic sword Graham, realizing that the instability all this time was because he had intentionally suppressed his own magic power. Opposite him, Kudo roared in envy. Aster, you are holding what I have long yearned for. If you just let that heaven-sent gift rot away without knowing anything, then I also have the right to be arrogant. Hand it all over to me. She unleashed a full power strike, creating a horrific magical explosion that enveloped Aster. Surprisingly, Aster still stood firm, leaving Kudo astonished. He blocked my full power strike. With his eyes glowing brightly, he smiled proudly. Thank you so much. Thanks to you, I've come to my senses. Without a single bit of hesitation, Aster rushed straight forward, without even shaping his blade, leaving Kudo utterly shocked by this reckless move. Now he knows how to strike back at his sister. What a sister worth every penny. Kudo realized. The magical power from that attack, just now, was the endless source of energy, hidden deep within the 7-winged crest, though he couldn't completely control it yet. At this life or death moment, Aster concentrated his entire magic power at the exact moment of impact instead of maintaining the blade's shape. This bold tactic made Kudo silently marvel. Turns out you thought of a good way, you idiot. In the midst of battle, Aster reminded himself of this precious second life. He swore he would not let it pass by meaninglessly. From the power of the sword to this new family. Without letting his opponent catch her breath, Aster continued to unleash powerful, glowing red slashes, making Kudo could only gasp in amazement. The sword in Aster's hand suddenly disappeared, leaving Kudo completely disoriented. The sword vanished. But immediately, and even more terrifying murderous intent enveloped the space as Aster closed in. He roared with determination. I will no longer hold myself back. Aster swung his arm, releasing all the violent magic power into a head-on attack, causing Kudo's eyes to contract in sheer terror. Before the earth-shattering power that was crashing down, her younger brother unleashed his power that fast? This time she might really be a goner, boo-hoo. Kudo woke up with a start in bed. Her eyes were filled with confusion as she asked herself, is this my room? Seeing her younger sister wake up, Mafa gently drew the curtains to let the sunlight flood into the room, then smiled. Oh, you're finally awake. You woke up really late. Kudo immediately sat up as the memory of the horrific confrontation suddenly rushed back, making her panic. Thinking back, what on earth happened in the match with Aster? Mafa calmly explained that Aster was the one who carried her all the way back here. The boy even lied to save face for his big sister, saying she just suddenly fell asleep right in the middle of the match because she was too exhausted after the long journey. However, Kudo knew very well that the truth wasn't that simple. That's not right. She shuddered, recalling the moment Aster's glowing red blade came crashing down. At that life or death moment, she was absolutely certain she would be cut down by Aster. But in reality, he had actively dispelled the magic power blade right before impact. What brushed past her body was only the remnant of that violent energy stream. Even though she knew Aster would never bring himself to kill his own sister, the terrifying murderous intent and his glowing red eyes at that time still made a genius like Kudo tremble, because she truly thought she was going to be killed. Thinking of the younger brother, who was both terrifying and thoughtful, Kudo smirked slightly. He really is an obnoxious younger brother to the very core. Even though he's clearly much smaller than me. She decisively grabbed her sword, turned to call out to Mafa, Sister Mafa. Did Aster head out to battle again this time? I don't accept that match. She was bursting with momentum, wanting a rematch immediately. This time, I'll use my full power right from the start. However, Mafa calmly extinguished that intention with a single sentence. If it's Aster, he has already left, you know. Kudo stood stunned in the empty room, realizing that her troublesome younger brother had long since departed. Hearing the news from Mafa, Kudo was dumbfounded, unable to believe her ears upon learning that a summons from the main house had been sent specifically to Aster. Mafa wondered if Kudo knew about what father had just discussed earlier, leaving the big sister completely frozen before crying out in shock. Utterly, as she had never heard of it before. On the carriage rolling toward the main family, Aster thoughtfully looked out the window while Viscount Highfield anxiously explained about the people they were about to face. It was none other than the Council of Elders, the true shadows ruling the Elmham family. From the dark, comprising former family heads and seniors holding colossal influence despite having withdrawn from the front lines. Highfield couldn't help but wonder why they hadn't cared at all for the past 10 years, yet chose to summon Aster at this exact moment. I think they probably just have too much free time and want to satisfy their curiosity, he guessed. That perhaps the incident at the Sword Dance Festival had alerted those old men, who valued the family's reputation more than life itself. According to rumors, anyone who tarnished the Elmham name would be thrown into a cage as food for wild beasts. Seeing Aster nonchalantly recall those brutal punishments, Highfield asked in astonishment where his son had heard such things. Aster smiled faintly and casually replied that he had heard it somewhere, and that he had mentally prepared himself for execution or exile. Seeing his father worry about him going without an escort, he reassured him that everything was fine and revealed his original intention was to leave before his sisters returned. Aster confided that if he wasn't around, Sister Kudo could truly spread her wings and fly. Thanks to the match with her, he had begun to understand how to master the magic sword Gram, and could sense the power of the 7 wings more clearly than before. Holding the sword firmly in his hand, Aster looked at his father with a resolute gaze and made one final request. Therefore, no matter what happens to me from now on, please do not save me. Truly a heartbreakingly mature child. Highfield looked at Aster with a deeply worried gaze and asked, have you already prepared yourself to survive all alone? But just as the atmosphere was turning somber, a resounding shout from outside cut them off. Survive what? The youngest brother is acting all arrogant and showy. Instantly, a figure rushed straight into the carriage, leaving both father and son dumbfounded. Aster's eyes widened as he recognized the familiar face. Sister Kudo? Why are you here? He couldn't believe this sister could actually jog and chase after the carriage for such a long distance. Kudo casually jumped inside, panting heavily while reproaching him. Don't you find it cruel? Leaving quietly without saying a word to your sister. She revealed she had heard everything about Aster being summoned by the grand elders of the main house. Even the talented Mafa had never been summoned even once, proving the serious nature of the situation. Seeing Kudo's intention to tag along, Highfield anxiously tried to stop her, but she decisively asserted, I understand. I heard that father called us here to look after everything while father is away. I understand perfectly clear. Kudo's face suddenly became serious. She looked at Aster and spoke in a deep voice. This summons means trouble is brewing, so we must be careful to that extent. She didn't hesitate to reiterate the warning from Sister Mafa that Aster might never return again. Seeing his sister worry too much, Aster smiled slightly to reassure her, you're exaggerating. I'm just going to meet them and talk. Very unexpectedly, Kudo pointed her finger straight at his face and declared, listen here, Aster. I really hate you. Because you're a man, because of the 7 wings, and because you're always treated specially. She just ran until she was almost exhausted. Yet she still has enough breath to rap like that. Huh? She continued to pour out her long-held feelings. Because you are stronger than me, your big sister. And because you keep acting like an adult. Even though you're just my younger brother. All of those things. However, following those harsh words was an unusual warmth. Kudo asserted that no matter how strong or showy Aster was, he would always be her precious younger brother. So make sure to return safely, and then we will have another rematch. If you back out while you're ahead, I will never forgive you. Having said her piece, Kudo decisively leaped off the fast-moving carriage, leaving Aster completely bewildered. What did she come here for anyway? Highfield looked at the playful figure of his daughter, then smiled and remarked, she is a good rival, isn't she? Aster quietly looked into the distance, silently sending his gratitude to his hot-tempered, yet deeply affectionate sister. With a resolute gaze, he promised himself, I will definitely return. Behind them, Kudo still stood in the middle of the dusty road, waving goodbye to the carriage fading into the sunset. The moment they set foot at the main gate of the main family, Viscount Highfield and Aster were stopped by a long line of fully armed soldiers. A guard respectfully bowed, but his tone carried a serious weight. Welcome back, Lord Highfield. The Grand Elder is already waiting inside. These old guys are pulling a preemptive strike right away. Seeming to sense something unusual, Highfield coldly rejected the guidance. No need for a guide. I know the way. However, the squad of soldiers still resolutely closed in. That is impossible, sir. We have received orders that we must absolutely escort the 2 of you together. Looking at the surrounding spears, Aster silently noted, as expected, he didn't call us here just to pamper his nephew. The atmosphere is nothing like that at all. Standing before the grand and magnificent castle, Aster looked up at the soaring towers with a deeply complex gaze. How nostalgic. It's been a long time since I last returned. Noticing his son's distraction, Highfield reminded him in a deep voice, I trust you understand, Aster. Don't lose your temper, at least not today. No matter what anyone says to you. The Viscount showed clear signs of anxiety as he walked amidst the encirclement of guards. He instructed further, it still depends on how the other side acts. What I mean is, the other side is the real problem. Highfield tried to mentally prepare. Aster before the fateful meeting, listen carefully. The person we are about to meet is. However, Aster was drawn to the empty training grounds in the distance. He thought to himself, I don't see Dallas anywhere. Right, since his dominant hand was crushed. So it's probably hard for him to return for now. His distraction forced Highfield to snap. Are you listening, Aster? Children these days. It's like water off a duck's back. Why is your face so blank? If he were my kid, I'd yell at him like that, haha. Turning around with a start, Aster quickly reassured his father. Huh? Yes, of course. Today, I'll be as quiet as a clam. Since sister told me to return safely. The father and son stopped before the giant wooden doors leading into the main hall. The loud shout of the guard formally announced. Lord Highfield and his son have arrived. The doors swung open to reveal a vast and imposing space. An old, but powerful laugh echoed from the end of the hall. Haha, you have finally arrived. It's been over 10 years, hasn't it? My nephew Highfield. Highfield immediately dropped to one knee on the red carpet to pay his respects. Long time no see, sixth-generation family head. However, the mysterious figure sitting on the highest chair only coldly corrected him. No, Grand Elder. Aster narrowed his eyes, looking toward the three elders sitting majestically on intricately carved chairs, radiating a suffocating pressure that enveloped the entire room. Aster silently noted, so that is Zenith A. Elmham, the sixth-generation family head. A true monster hiding himself in the shadows of the family. Surrounding him were high-profile figures under the Elmham banner that Aster had seen at the Sword Dance Festival. But he suddenly noticed an important absence. Roderick is not here. Where did he go instead of coming to watch this play? As if reading the boy's thoughts, Zenith coldly spoke up. That guy is not here, kiddo. He explained that as the leader of the knights, serving the royal family, Roderick is not free to bother with matters that he calls trivial. Therefore, retired veterans, like them, had to generously step up to handle the administrative affairs of the family. Aster silently assessed the situation. Though he had never met him in his past life, he could clearly sense the pressure from this retiree who still carried serious weight. Looking at the tense, sweating face of his father, he wondered what trivial matter they were actually referring to. Zenith laughed with hidden meaning before growling. You've already guessed it, haven't you? I heard your pet dog caused quite a commotion at the Sword Dance Festival. Aster narrowed his eyes in vigilance. As expected, the purpose of this summons was exactly that matter. Highfield quickly spoke up to protect his son, asserting that the current family head, Roderick, had personally handled and closed the case. However, the other elders immediately dismissed this, claiming it was just a play acted out for the public. While the Elmham reputation had in fact been severely tarnished, they believed that adopting a child of unknown background was a mistake from the very beginning, and they couldn't turn a blind eye if he dared to bare his fangs at the main line. Zenith radiated a glowing red murderous intent that enveloped the room, coldly declaring that the only way was to exile Aster, and even Lord Highfield would have to receive a fitting punishment. Unable to sit still and let his father be implicated, Aster decisively stood right up and shouted, Wait a minute. I did everything on my own. My father has absolutely nothing to do with this. The boy is starting to talk back to the old elders now. You're starting to lose your cool, kiddo. Highfield squeezed his eyes shut in extreme tension, while Aster quietly observed those sitting up high. Zenith snorted coldly in utter disdain. As expected, that fellow has no manners whatsoever. A mere child dares to interfere while adults are speaking. The old man began to flaunt his power. Under my banner, there are 12,000 knights. We bear the title of Elmham, but the knights are not a single unified body. There are countless people always eyeing that supreme seat. His gaze swept across the elders, sitting around him with stern expressions. Then he growled, Of course. The same applies even to this place. Zenith stood up,